So that's a little bit about Maanini and what this group does.
Yeah, and Maanini is now more than 500 members strong, and growing day by day. So
It's
that's great.
growing.
Yeah.
It's been wonderful. And um, Lakshmi has done her magic. And really, it was just an idea that popped in my mind one day that, hey, and I'll tell you how it happened. It was like I needed something and I didn't know where to look for it, like a resource. Okay, for one of the shows, like a dupatta or something. I don't even remember. And I'm like, I wish there was a group where I could just put it out and say, hey, ladies, I'm looking for this. Does anybody have it in the Twin Cities? That's exactly how it started. And I was like, the way it started is if anybody needs anything, any kind of help, any kind of resources, food, delivery hai, parents nahi aaye hai, any kind of help, that would have been like a good thing. And then it just went dormant, as Lakshmi said nicely. But it was I think it was meant to be that she saw it and then she revived it. And it's
Yeah,
fun. And yeah, it's fun, and we have lots of ideas, and we are open to have ideas from everybody who's watching. Please reach out, and thank you for all the nice notes and messages you guys write. It's encouraging, and it tells us that okay, we are doing the right thing. So with
yes.
that, yeah, sorry,
As we and both Lakshmi and Sheetal, for this month they have chosen the theme of health and well-being, and mental health is on top of the list for all of us. So that is why we selected this topic today, which intersects COVID with mental health. And specifically, we are going to focus on, I don't like to use the exact term, but the stigma associated with COVID. And myself and Sonali, we've been doing some of these presentations all the way to India. So we do online presentations to to an organization where we talk about COVID stigma and what it is and how to deal with it, and sort of discussions around that. So we thought that would be a good topic. And should we get started?
Yes, and before we get started, I want to introduce our very lovely host, Sayali Amarapurkar, Chagirdar. And she has been, I got to know her, I have heard about her in Marathi Association, but I really got to know her a lot more this year. And Sayali, I'm amazed with all the things that you do, and then you keep your peace of mind, very calmly. So I'm very happy to know you, and I'm glad that you agreed to take the lead on this. And Sally does a lot of things. I don't know what all to say about it. Sally, do you want to tell a little bit about you, about
Oh,
Asha? Yeah.
Oh yeah, sure. Without taking much time,
Yeah.
I have a PhD in family social science, which is marriage and family therapy, and I did research and teaching at the university for a few years. But for the past 6 years, I am into so Asha USA is an organization in Twin Cities, non-profit organization that me and my friend Kamala Puram we co-founded, and we focus on issues that pertain to South Asian immigrants. So people like us from India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Nepal, and Tibet. And we have a lot of programs, education, we do research, so on and so forth. And Mental Health Matters is our major initiative, which has been going on for the past 4 years. And if you want more information about Asha USA, you can go on the website, ashausa.org. And I think I should stop there, Sheetal, because let's get to the topic for today.
Yeah,
Thank
Sally,
you
just
very much.
one quick thing I would add for all of the Maaninis who are watching us live on Facebook. If you haven't met Sally or known her, I did interview her as a part of a Women Inspiration series, and the link to that interview is in Maanini. If you just search for Women Inspiration, and you'll be able to get much more information about Sally through that interview as well. So
Thank
with
you.
that, Sally, it's all yours.
Thank you. And when we were thinking of doing this topic, we wanted some other women to step forward and also share in this panel. So we have invited today Aditi Garg, Bena Patel, Jyoti, Surya, and Shreyasi Brahmbhat. So a big hello to them. Shreyasi, we can't see you, but I hope you can hear us. And let's
Yes,
get
I can.
Yeah, okay. So we are going to start the session actually with a small video, because I thought that will be interesting, so that to get the message across as to when we say COVID stigma, what are we really talking about? Okay. And this video, I don't know, let me quickly share my screen. Share screen.
आ गया अमित हॉस्पिटल से। देखो मैं कह रहा हूँ, महीने भर उसके घर से दूर रहेंगे, गेट के पास भी नहीं जाएंगे और सारी खिड़कियां बंद कर देते हैं। ये तीसरा कप किसके लिए?
अमित के लिए।
क्या?
उसे अकेले रहने के लिए कहा है, अकेला छोड़ने के लिए नहीं ना।
हम दूर रहकर भी अपनापन दिखा सकते हैं। ब्रुकबॉर्न रेड लेबल, स्वाद अपनेपन का।
So this is a sweet little ad which actually Sonali shared with me. I have not seen this because it was shown in India. And I don't know how many of you have seen this before, but this is Mrunal Dev and her husband, her real husband, and they shot this ad during COVID lockdown. And it is a very telling ad. So I'm going to stop talking, and I want the panelists to say something as to what do we see in this ad.
It's the unknown and the presumptions and the bias that kind of speak, it's the fear of the unknown that make you kind of behave in certain ways.
Mm-hmm. True. So the fear of unknown. What else? There is no right or wrong answer. So anything, your first reaction that comes.
It shows how we can support each other in this difficult times and not just isolate people who've already been through a stressful time and isolating them further, and how we can support them.
Right, right. उसे अकेले रहने के लिए कहा है, अकेले छोड़ने के लिए नहीं. That was, I think, a very important this thing. So it's physical distance. Actually, the term is physical distance when we say social distance. So we have to be supportive, and I think that's very sweet. Somebody else, Jyoti, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to repeat the same what she has said now.
Okay.
It is, I look at as if you have a problem, there are always ways you can sort it out, how the problem can be approached. I look the ad in that way.
True. And remember, this is their neighbor they're talking about. So in good times, I'm sure they must have spent a lot of good times together. So you brought out a few things, and let's move to this slide. Actually, can you see it?
Yes,
Okay.
I can see it.
So it, as you said, it is an unknown disease. Though, we read so much about it, there's so much media coverage. Still, there are so many unknowns. And we are often afraid of the unknown. And so it is very easy to associate fear with it. And that's one reason why if somebody has COVID, or if someone's family member has COVID, then our attitude towards them, our behavior towards them is different. And this is unknowingly. We are not doing it out of any spite or anything, but it is our natural reaction. And I'm sure many of you have stories or you have heard of anecdotes. And especially if there's a death due to COVID in a family, then what that family goes through is very, very difficult. Sonali, would you like to say something?
No, really, I think, Sayali, it's going good. I'll pitch in when I feel like. But I think I was more than happy when Shreyasi Bhat came up with the fact that it is something unknown. And this is what all of us have experienced, not only COVID, may it be any other thing, which you are not aware of. Our first reaction is fear. So this is what is prominently seen. And the last part, when you said the third point, associating with others, I think that is another thing which was strongly observed, that giving names to this particular disease. This is a Chinese virus. You have got, so that kind of a discrimination, and people were, distancing themselves, especially if they got to know that, okay, he or she comes from that particular country where it has been originated. So I think that is something which we need to keep in mind, that it is not that we all are prone to it, we will not have it, but any one of us is equally prone to having that particular disease. So we need to be careful and not be afraid or naming people.
True. And we are getting some comments on Facebook as well. Sheetal, can you unmute? I think you're talking, but we can't hear you.
I was just going to read the comment on Facebook from Deepa. She says, I think media plays a role in shaping our views and fear as well. What's your thoughts on that?
True.
Very true. In fact, when we were talking to one group, all the information what they had was based on the news coverage, and the news was just looking at the negative side or talking about the spike and height in cases, but none of the media was talking about what kind of measures you need to take or what is happening at the research field. So in fact, we were suggesting selectively go for the news. You don't go by just what you read in the prints, but go to the authentic source and look for the authentic information.
True. And so one is, what is your source of information? Another is lack of knowledge. Okay, so even if you get the information, are you really getting the scientific information about how COVID spreads, and that anybody can get it? Anybody. So it's not one particular group or somebody, just because you did something you got it. It's not like that. People might take all the measures that are needed to stay safe and still get COVID. So it's very important to stay away from rumors, false information,
WhatsApp.
or myth,
WhatsApp
or whatever
forwards,
information you
yes.
take it with, make sure you look at it whether it has scientific basis. Is this true? Because that's what propagates the negative attitudes towards people. And these are stressful times in all aspects, not just health related, but we all know who are living in Minnesota or in the USA right now that what all we are going through. So it is very difficult to stop doing certain things. One is labeling, okay, and we'll see in a minute how we label without our knowing it. Okay, we don't have anything mean in our mind, but when we talk about people who have COVID or who had COVID, we will refer to them with certain terms. And
Sayali,
yeah,
before we switch to the next one, I think Benaji wanted to say something, and I think she
sure.
was on mute.
That's fine. It's okay. It's been
Okay.
covered.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead. Yeah, Benaji, go ahead. You can talk.
No, it's okay. It got covered, so that's
Okay.
fine. Let's just carry on.
And it's always
Okay.
good to hear from you. You can reinforce whatever is being said. So please open up.
This is that the fear of media. Media created a lot of fear for COVID as well. It was better for all of us to follow what the scientists said and take precautions accordingly rather than listening to the media. Media plays a huge part on influencing people with negativity. That's what I was going to say.
I agree. And I think media could have done a better job at doing the positive side, which this ad showed. Like they've done that in the past. Like think of AIDS, how it was, and people were concerned that it's going to spread by touching. They did a very good job at destigmatizing that. So they could have done a better job. And not just news media, but other kinds of ads and other things that they could have done a similar job at. Like, okay, these are things you can still do with taking the precautions. So yeah.
Right.
So Pooja, sorry, Sayali, I'm reading the comments. People have some questions. So Pooja says, it's definitely hard to distinguish what information is authentic and what is not. Can any of you enlist a couple websites that people should just stick to and, because that's what we do, that we just go to the right information. Sayali, you want to take it?
Right, yeah. So for us, it is CDC website, Center for Disease Control. And they are very good at updating information or even putting out educational information. Like even if you say COVID stigma, for example, they have so much educational material there. You talk about vaccine. Now, again, vaccine is the new thing. There are so many misconceptions about the vaccine and all this discussion around whether it's safe, when are we getting it? Some people are too eager to get it. Some people don't want to take it, and so on and so forth. So CDC website is a good place to go. Then our governor, now I'm only focusing on Minnesota. So our governor, Office of Governor, does sometimes weekly, sometimes monthly presentations or talks on what is going on and what the public needs to do. And all that is very scientifically based, and they have done their work before giving us the information. So I think that is another good source that we should either subscribe to their emails or, whatever, Twitter or whatever you want, or just listen to NPR. I would say it's a pretty good source of valid information.
It's the best source, I think.
Yeah, Binaji is seconding that. So these are some of the things we can do. And
then there is this World Health Organization site. When if you want to have a general knowledge of what everybody in the world is thinking, there are really good articles in that. Right?
Yes, because we can't just focus on Minnesota. We have our relatives all over the world and India specifically. So if you're worried about what's going on in India about COVID, then there are other sources. But just we have to be cognizant of the source. So I think that's very
I also want to add, sometimes media is like just getting too much information is too much. So it just gets overwhelming and it creates anxiety. So knowing that, okay, I need to stop this. Just need to do something else to distract myself, because the more I'm reading, the more anxious I'm getting. So recognizing that and then taking a break and doing something else, that's also important. So knowing the right sources and also knowing, okay, how much is too much.
Exactly. Yeah. And Aditi Garg is a child psychiatrist, right, Aditi?
Yeah.
So she can definitely talk about that aspect as to what can cause stress and anxiety. So what is too much?
Yeah.
Benaji, you wanted to say something?
No, I'm fine.
Okay.
So I think this is a really good question, and that's from Deepa. She says, I know that there's a lot of stigma in India, but I'm wondering, how is it in the United States?
So I think it's worst here because they've been brainwashed by the media and by our president's rhetoric. So it's really worst here than I think it would be in India.
Sadly. Yeah. I'm going to ask you, Benaji, why do you think it is worse here? Like what?
The messages that were given out, right, about the mask, there were double messages about keeping social distancing. The president set a very bad example to his, what would you say?
Citizens.
Yeah.
Countrymen.
And yeah, he just, I think, look at the rate, the way it's grown here in this last month. And look at the rate it's growing in India. So the precautions were not laid out right here. There were mixed messages to the general public. Media tried their best medically and scientists tried their best, but due to the messages that were given out by our leader, didn't help them in controlling the spreading of COVID. That's how I look at it.
So
yeah, I think we would agree.
Yeah, and so there's a fine line between not taking precautions and not doing things that you're supposed to do to keep yourself and others safe from COVID, and treating people who have COVID or have had COVID in a different way. So that's the fine line. And it has been seen that, especially in India, we have heard many instances where people who have had COVID, let's say somebody has COVID, they were off work for a month and then they come back. And the people around them, their colleagues or people who know them, behave very differently towards them, as if, like, oh, you can't mingle with them, you can't go and talk to them. What if, they are still contagious? What if I get it? And so on and so forth. So that kind of really isolates that person or doesn't provide that support system that person needs. And whole families have been isolated. I've heard in India. So,
but Sayali, I think that exists here also, right? Shreyashi, you agree? Shreyashi would agree upon that.
I completely agree, Binabis. I know.
Yeah, please share. Please share.
Oh my God. I wanted to go visit her mother was visiting Shreyashi. She's a good friend. But based on they were infected with COVID and they came after about a month. But somehow it was not me, but listening to everybody. I have an American friend, Nancy, who's so protective about me. And she said, don't go visit them. It's dangerous. And then you know what happens? You get emotionally really torn apart. And in that process, when her mother was visiting her, I had a very good friend in Houston. She was a pediatrician and she took all the precautions and she got COVID and she just passed away and her funeral was yesterday. So it's been very devastating for me. And then see, when you come in that situation and when it hits home, it becomes a dilemma for us to think what's right or wrong. So sometimes it becomes, a problem within each individual, what they're experiencing at a given time with this COVID atmosphere. And depression I'm very depressed, okay? I mean, I had to do a eulogy last night. I was up till 1 crying and can't speak a word out of my mouth. So it affects a lot of people that being at home and not seeing friends, not visiting. And like you're saying, it can exist in any part of the world.
Yes.
I won't just label that Indians are particularly doing this. It's an individual decision that everybody makes, when they say that somebody's infected and we want visit or we want go. So, yes. I mean, that's where I stand. I have an American friend, she doesn't leave her house.
Right.
And I have another American friend who says, let's go for a walk. So, and she's teaching in school. So it's different personalities taking this, depending how seriously they take this disease and how much they understand of it.
True.
Yeah.
I would like to add one of my friends' experience in United States. They stay in California and they have a very close friend who is from China. And she was born here. She has never been to China. But instead, when this pandemic outbroke first time, she visited for a grocery, and people around a few people there had beaten blue and red out of her, saying that go back to your country. You don't belong to here. You guys eat everything, and this is why we were locked out and we were shut down. And she was constantly saying that I don't belong there. I am a United States citizen. I'm born here, but nobody listened to her, and she has to get admitted to hospital, and she had to recover from that mental stress. And still, she is very much worried to get out. So I say that in United States also we had very bad experiences because of this COVID.
Yes, and you are so right. And thank you, Benaji, for sharing your experience. And we are really sorry to hear. As we all said, if you need any kind of support, I think you should reach out. And when I say, I don't want to say that any particular country or community is behaving like this. It's human tendency.
Right.
And since we are all a group of Asian Indian women here, I am trying to see, because and it has been seen that our community will interact more with other Asian Indians and, build this community around this. So, and I've heard from a few people in the last few months that, it has been difficult. Like on a normal basis, if there's a death in the community, everybody will go and visit the family. They'll bring food. There will be some sort of public event or a funeral where people are able to express and show support for the family. But during this time, if there was a death, even of a very eminent community member, people were confused as to how am I going to show my grief or even go and support the family? I don't know. Because of all this, as we are saying, stigma or all this confusion associated with what is the right thing to do. And I think that is what, so let's look at what are some of the things we can do. Okay, so we all have had experiences. And if anybody else wants to share, please feel free to share.
I just wanted to say, add to Binabis's experience, what she said. Even before I asked my mom and my sister to come visit us, we were really in a dilemma. And again, as Binabis said, the only reason I was kind of pushing for it is that I don't have a whole lot of chance to see them. And, it would be nice for us to get together. And as she said, it had been more than a month since they've had even symptoms. and things like that, more than 3 weeks and all. So per CDC guideline, yes, it was safe enough for them to travel. But again, it's not just general public, but it's also the supposedly more intelligent and known people, even the scientists themselves don't know what's going on because it's such a new disease. So really we took all the precautions we could, and at that point we just decided that once they do come here, we will do quarantining together, just so as to, because we don't know. Yes, for all evidence says that once you've been infected, you're going to have immunity at least up to 3 months, if not 6 months. But since that has not been proven or said by CDC yet, we just said, why take any chances?
And we have to keep this in mind also. Okay, my friend, she was in Houston. She was a pediatrician. She got the symptoms twice in that week. 2 tests were taken. They were negative. And by the 3rd time she got positive, her lungs were gone. She was in ICU for 4 weeks. She was a life of Clear Lake and NASA area where we lived. Everybody knew her. She was covered in ABC, NBC, all the news. But so you know what? Even scientists are trying to figure out. Even these tests do come up negative. It depends on the immunity of individual, where some of them get tested in the first round of after the pneumonia, they get positive. She didn't get positive for 2 times. They said you have pneumonia, but they said it's not COVID. And she, being a doctor, was sent back home. So it's a very difficult situation. Even the scientists are, even the science is right now. It's a new disease. There's a lot of research to be done. And now with the second virus coming in, it's going to be difficult. So we as human beings have to be positive, try to take all the precautions, which the scientists are telling us, and move forward in life. And we can't let this situation tell us, oh, we are sitting at home, or we don't have anything to do. We are still blessed at home with a lot of things we can do. It's like long time back, I told Lakshmi that life has become, and COVID is teaching us to live our life with bare necessities in life. We can live as our ancestors did. So there's a lot of positive things to look into this too, rather than be negative about it all the time.
Yeah, so true.
Right.
So so you are rightly pointing out all that, this is the situation. So how do we address it? What do we do about it? As you just said, we have to be positive, and we have to make sure that we and people around us are safe. But in doing so, we are not going to push anybody away. We are not going to isolate anybody. So what are some of the simple ways we can do that? One thing is, we are lucky that we have a good communication system due to technology, that we can communicate still. Can you imagine in 1918 when the flu pandemic came, they didn't have this communication technology. Can you imagine the isolation they must have felt at that time? So here's just a simple do and don't list. Again, this is not something that this is the only thing, but this is just an idea, and we can of course add our own ideas to it. So when we talk about COVID, it's a good idea not to attach location or ethnicity. As we just said, it's not only Indians or only India or only Europe or only US. No, this is a universal experience right now, and person of any ethnicity, person of any profession can get it. So it's not like, oh, you are a doctor and still you got COVID. No, in fact, you are more likely to get COVID, right? And who are being treated. So people who have COVID and who are getting treatment, instead of referring to them as cases of victims, let's just say these are people who got COVID and they're being treated. They are recovering from COVID right now. Words like COVID-19 suspects, like somebody who has had a test, but still the test, you haven't heard the result, and you're like, oh, there's that person is suspected to have COVID-19. So these are negative terms. If we can stop using those terms.
Avoid using them.
Yeah.
Sayali, hey, I just wanted to add one quick point to this, is that part of the stigma is also very quickly we judge people who may have contracted COVID, right? Like immediately when we hear about somebody, the human tendency is to quickly judge and say, oh, he or she did not do the right thing, did not take the right precautions, was being careless with their health or whatever. And that's not necessarily true. So that's one of the stigma that we should, catch ourselves if we
And
find
address
ourselves
it.
thinking that way. Because sometimes you can do all the necessary precautions, you can do all the right things, and it's sometimes not in your hand. I mean, it can happen to anybody in spite of the precautions taking. So that's something that I've heard in discussions, or in just when you talk to your friend circle, or when you talk to your people. It's like we're very quick to judge, oh, they were careless, so they,
Yeah,
you know
yeah.
that may be the case, but it's not always the case. So we have to be a little careful to jump to those conclusions without knowing what the background is. So that adds to
Yeah.
the stigma.
Also, I want to add that not everybody has the privilege of just working from home. So a lot of people go out, and a lot of people who are essential workers go out in public and they wear masks, they take precautions, but they're obviously at high risk. So, and they have to, their kids are going to school, so they are at a higher risk of the infection. So knowing that and not like isolating them, also to think about, and not saying, okay, they are at a high risk, so we shouldn't just stay away because we are staying home, we are taking all the precautions and not isolating the essential workers.
Right. And the biggest part, which is so difficult, and I myself have experienced that it is very difficult, is not to shame people. Right. Initially, when this all started, it was very common to say, oh my God, they're not even wearing masks, or, they are not following the proper precautions. So we are shaming people. And of course, that is our way of dealing with it, where we know, oh, this person is not wearing a mask, so I will be careful around this person or whatever. But when that takes the form of gossiping or rumor or talking behind people's back, then that's negative. Instead of saying, one positive way or creative way of doing it is, I read somewhere that keep extra masks in your purse, and if you see somebody not wearing a mask, just hand them out and say, I will talk to you once you have this mask on. This is a constructive way of dealing with the situation, rather than running away from that person and saying, hey, you're not wearing a mask, I can't talk to you, or whatever it is. So that part is really, and it's very natural, it comes very natural. I know some friends who do not wear masks, and they're both Indians and Americans. Especially initially during March, April, they did not wear masks. And first of all, oh no, how will I talk to others, how will my photographs come, I can't be wearing a mask in the pictures, and so many other issues. But gradually they came around. But I thought this was a nice idea to carry extra masks and just tell them, yeah, we can talk as long as you're wearing this mask with me. And so, yeah, if anybody else wants to share anything, so I'm not going to
I
read
want to
the
share.
slide.
I
Yeah.
want to share something really fun. So I do in-home consultations. Okay, so I go to 2 or 3 people's homes almost every day. I offer them virtual consultations, and then we have this whole questionnaire that we have to go through. That anybody has been sick, has there been a COVID test, the whole good list. And then I say, well, mask is mandatory, gloves are mandatory because I wear that. And then I go to the door and they're like totally chilled out, like not wearing a mask, not all of them. And then they actually ask me like, oh, are you okay if I don't wear a mask? And I'm like, actually, no. I would really appreciate it if you can wear a mask, because I go from one home to the other. So I have to take care of things. And usually people don't resist. Like, I just stand outside till they come with a mask. And initially I was very reluctant to think like, oh my God, what are they going to think about it? But now I realized it, like it's a responsibility that I have to make them aware that no, it's good for you and it's good for me, and I have children at home, so you have to do it if you want me to come inside the house. And I think more people need to implement that. um, going to parties, just it's really hard for me to digest the idea of partying at this point. I mean, really hard for me to digest it. And I understand, the small core group that you have been hanging out for the whole year makes sense. But I think in all this whole COVID thing, people also struggled with the idea of not being able to socialize. COVID or not COVID, human mind is not, made that way to not socialize, especially in the United States. Every Saturday, Sunday, Friday, there is something, birthday, something, outdoors. You have something lined up, and not being able to do that for almost a year is driving people crazy. And
besides Sheetal, besides socializing, going out, restaurants were closed. It's a way of life. Friday, Saturday, Sunday brunches. So all that put together,
very hard.
Very hard. And other things, Sayali, on the mask, carrying masks in your purses. Yes, I agree with you. But my friend Nancy at Bialis in Maple Grove had a very bad experience. She's so particular about mask and keeping distance. She goes early morning in the senior hours to shop, and there was some senior lady who was shopping without a mask and won't keep her distance. So she said, "Excuse me, can we just maintain the distance as you don't have a mask?" She ignored it and she'll just keep closing. Then she took out a mask and gave it to her. "If you don't have one, here, I have one." And Baileys also was giving in, but she just walked in. She was arrogant, or maybe didn't care, or couldn't care less kind of person. You know what she did? She started picking up things from the shelves and started throwing at her. The management came and they had to ask that lady to leave. So it's, I don't know, we can't be safe even in doing that, depending on who we are dealing with at that time. Maybe the lady was having a bad time, hard time that whole day, or whatever her problem was. But there are pros and cons of doing all this. We don't know who we are going to end up with when we offer a mask.
Right. So, it's like the population or the people around us, you can put them on a bell-shaped curve, right? Most people are reasonable. Most people will react to you in a reasonable way.
Can I just add something here? I've been listening to all your experiences. You will be surprised to know in UAE, the government is developing the culture of wearing masks. It is so evidently and so prominently done. Like all our billboards or all signs, they say, "Be responsible." Our advertisements on the radio are saying, "You are responsible. Be safe." That they have made a beautiful tagline: "Your face, your space, and your," I'm forgetting the third one. And it is mandatory for any and every person who is in the public domain to wear a mask. If you are in your own vehicle, you need not wear a mask if you are with a family. But if you are not with your family, it is mandatory. Like suppose colleagues are traveling together, it is mandatory for them to wear a mask. So I think it is the culture which needs to come in. One needs to understand the risk which is involved and do it for yourself and for others. So I think somebody who's
Sonali,
going,
that's where the leadership
Isn't there a fine?
that is the,
Isn't there a fine in Dubai? There's a fine, right?
there is a fine as well. Only when you are exercising, you are exempted from wearing mask. And there are, there are individuals who are checking on it. That is why people will never dare to step out of the house without wearing a mask. I think somewhere, this idea of freedom, quote unquote, I'm sorry to say, but the people in the US have that it's my freedom. I mean, one day we were looking at the news and the beaches were full just because it was a spring break. And youngsters were saying that it is my spring break. Nobody can stop me from being on a beach. And we are here talking about pandemic. I mean, it was very sad to see that. So I think one needs to exercise their own rights and responsibilities together. It can't be just freedom all the time.
True. So on the same lines, there is a question from Sindhu, because we have heard a lot of suicides and depression and a lot of nervous breakdowns for teenagers. So Sindhu Gupta asks us, how can we help teenagers understand this or deal with this?
Yeah, I'm sure Aditi, you might have some tips. I would just go ahead and say, because again, this is one more topic that me and Sonali, we have done some presentations on, whether it's teenagers or young adults or even, people like us. One thing to remember is this is 1 year or maybe 2 years in the whole lifetime. So this is not, what happens is we tend to think that, oh my God, this is a long period of time. I've missed on my exams, on my whatever social activities or whatever the plans in our life were, right? All the major milestones, everything. But we have to put things into perspective. So one thing, of course, if it's a child who is suicidal, first thing is get them help. Okay, get them professional help. But if you as a parent are talking to your children about the pandemic or about what they've missed or about upcoming school year, it is very important to put things into perspective. And I will let Aditi pitch in.
Yeah, I think giving the kids the opportunity to talk and how it's impacting, it's just not just that the COVID and they're isolating, it's also how schools are going, they're all online and how that's impacting them. A lot of kids are not motivated to do the schoolwork. So, and they feel like, I just don't have the interest. I don't have anything to look forward to. So I'm not as motivated. I don't have the energy to get out of bed every morning and just sit in front of the screens. There's Zoom fatigue. So there's a lot of that. There's social isolation. There's a lot of stuff that goes on that's just not the fear of the pandemic, fear of meeting friends, fear of, there's so many unknowns that we adults also feel. But with teenagers, it's added. That's the time when they develop these social skills. That's the time when they develop their personality, and just staying home by themselves, it just is too much for them. It's harder for them as compared to we adults. We've developed a lot more skills to manage these stressors that teenagers have not. So just keeping the open conversation and also reassuring them, this is just an interim, as you mentioned, it's just for a year, and just helping them figure out what are the other ways that they can reach out to other teenagers, other friends in their life, and just still maintain that social interaction in a safe way. So, and again, as if you feel like their functioning is going down to a point where they can't function, they're not eating as much, they're not sleeping well, they're not wanting to talk to you guys, then seek professional help. Those are concerning signs then.
Yeah. I think it is very essential for parents to look out for these signs. It's very, very important. If you see anything which is not normal, I mean, your child has been having a particular appetite and suddenly it has dropped. Or as Aditi rightly pointed out, they are unable to get out of their bed, attend to their classes regularly. I mean, some kind of lack of motivation. If such things are prevalent for quite some time, I think it is parents who need to look into it, have a dialogue with your own child. And I think somewhere, as this is a group where most of us are coming from India, I think the demands which we have from our parents, we need to, check those and be more realistic about what you are expecting out of your child, keeping in mind the particular situation through which they are going. Because we assume that they don't have stress. We feel only we adults are going through all this, but we need to understand kids of any age, they are also going through a lot of stress. I work with school, so I can say this with a lot of confidence that yes, may it be a grade 1 child or a grade 4 child or grade 8 child, all of them are experiencing this for the first time, and it does cause them stress and anxiety. So we need to be careful and work with them.
The stresses are different. It doesn't matter what the stress is, it's the impact that it has on them.
True.
And the kids understand, I mean, even if they themselves don't quite understand it, very young kids also will pick up on the stress that their parents are going through.
True.
And all of us are, I mean, at the same time, I'm not saying, I don't think we should be hiding our stress, but we should be verbalizing and saying that I'm worried. It's an unknown and it's okay to be worried. We'll get through this together.
True.
We also have a few more people joining us. One is Deepa Tangsare, and she is a PhD in positive psychology. She lives in Minnesota. She's a Maanini group member. And we also have Radha Chowli. So Deepa, Radha, if you have any comments or you want to pitch in, please let us know.
Thank you, Sayali. Yeah. I will keep pitching in. And I'll keep commenting also. Yeah. But I do agree because I have a teenager daughter and, she is in her senior year. In fact, she is really enjoying the online classes, but just that, the stress is quite high because she says that with the online, there's so much of work that the students have to do. that sometimes it could be really killing. So yes, we definitely need to look out for those signs, and especially I think teenage and COVID, it's kind of a bad combination because the kids are going through a lot of physiological changes too, and with the COVID coming in, it adds a lot more stress. uh, so yes.
Also knowing that depression in kids and adolescents shows up as anger. Like it's not necessarily they're just down and they're crying, but it can show up as irritability and anger. So watching for those also.
Yes, yeah, very important.
Sally, one thing that I would add is, during this COVID year, a lot of things have been taken away from us. If we had activities that we used to do outside, and I'm talking about school children, teenagers as well, whether it was sports activities, gym, or outdoor, programs and stuff, all those got shut down because of COVID. But what we have realized as adults is also to somehow keep ourselves engaged. And again, from speaking with my community, there are so many offerings that are now available online for teenage kids, for kids of all ages, activities that are different from school per se, but things that will connect them with friends who are also interested in that, like video gaming, for example. Like, get a group together and all these boys are video gaming together and having a blast. Or whatever their passions are, music, enroll in a music class, and you're learning music with 10 other teenagers together. So having that inserted back into their lives to give them more of that well-rounded thing, at the same time that social connect with friends of their age. And also the pod system, which I think Sheetal alluded to earlier. If you have one or two close friends or families that have been in your pod since the beginning of the pandemic, and your kids and their kids are hanging out with each other, then that kind of social isolation is minimized, and stress related to that will also be addressed to some extent.
True, true. And kids in these pods, they can also, do activities like go for a run or go to the gym together, or, whatever they can do within the COVID restrictive environment. There are ways to deal with it. Radha, did you have
I think, my apologies that I've not been, there from the very beginning of the conversations. It seemed like, it has gone into, the effects of COVID on other people. So, I think all has been, said already. The only thing I can offer is the original conversation about the stigma associated with COVID. I think it's just such an important thing to acknowledge that it can come from anywhere. It is not your fault if you or somebody in your family or friend circle has it. That idea of this is somewhat going to be looked down upon, or you'll be looked on as a damaged goods, for a lack of a better term. I think it's just we need to just completely change that mindset. I'll have to say, my mother in India, she right around Ganesh Puja, she did not have like something that she wanted to cook for. So she said, let me quickly run to the corner supermarket and get what I need. She needed 3 or 4 things. So she was out exactly for 15 minutes. She did not know how she got it, but I believe that trip was the one that caused it. And she ended up getting COVID. And despite all the inputs, my parents live by themselves, both the couple live in Hyderabad, and she did not know. I video called her in 2 days, and, she had a little bit of a fever. Long story short, she went down faster than I could have anticipated. And, I had to literally get her in the hospital. Just be careful about, especially for folks, who are here and they have their parents living by themselves or not have that immediate sibling support there. Keep an eye always talk with them on video. I literally had to, get her into the hospital, and she was in the hospital for 4 days, and she was on, oxygen for a month after that. So it can happen to anybody. It can happen from anywhere. It is not your mistake. And my mom, for the longest, she still struggles with it, to say, how did I end up getting this? And that's the interesting thing about a pandemic. It's not like, you actively seeked it. It just shows up and you have to react to it. So if you can keep that as a mindset, I hope that stigma just goes away, because it's no fault of anybody. It's just out there, and hence it's called a pandemic.
Yeah, thank you, Radha, for sharing that personal experience. And I think in this group, each one of us has had a family member, either or a close friend, get COVID or have a death in the family due to COVID. And so we all understand the what Radha was just talking about. And I have had families in India. I've heard of people, not only in India, here as well. 7 people in the family getting COVID. Okay, 4 people dying, 3 people ending up very sick, and so on and so forth. So the whole families are sort of isolated in this context. And anyway, so yeah, Radha, we did cover a lot of those things in the beginning, and please feel free to go and look at the recording when you get a chance.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sayali.
Since we are running out of time, I am going to just do this final.
Sayali.
Yes.
Yeah, I just had one thing to say. We talked about the stigma, but any positive experiences, when people were suffering with COVID, from the society, any kind of, that would be also good to share. So any support groups available, or yeah,
Yes.
because I understand that there are negative experiences, but I'm sure there must have been some positive experiences too.
Of course. Yeah. Yeah. And actually, since we are talking about stigma, I think that would be a great topic to do another session. And we all know, especially in this community, a lot of help and support went around, and helping people who needed help in terms of food and all kinds of other things. But yes, Deepa, thank you. So what Deepa is saying is we should also discuss or keep in mind the positive things that happened due to the COVID pandemic. And that's a big topic. Radha, did you want to add something?
No, I think, that's just a very, very important thing. It's not gloom and doom always. Absolutely, there is a lot of unknown, but I think it's also important to see how the communities, friends and families across the world, how they came together to actually help out people, especially, everything from food to transportation to taking care of people who are left behind. I mean, there's just like so much there. Just having a different session that has some of those stories, I think it's going to be very empowering.
Yes, yeah.
Because to be honest, I think there was some sharing on Maanini's long time back about this lady who helps pregnant women with food, Indian lady. I was so amazed with the work that she does, like, because we don't have any support over here. Imagine being pregnant, being on bed for 9 months. Let's say you have a hard pregnancy. You don't know where your next food is going to come from, and that kind of a social work. That was really amazing to know that.
Yeah, Deepa, that was
someone is-
Ammani Jayanti
Yes.
that you were referring to.
Yeah. So we can also talk about some kind of these support groups which are available. You don't have to physically meet someone, but it is so great to know that the food is being dropped at my doorstep when I need to.
Yes.
So
and both Sheetal Kulkarni and Lakshmi Rajaram, and I know so many other wonderful women have done a lot of that work, especially during the beginning, March, April, May, summer months, and they always continue to do it. So Lakshmi, there you have another topic for your discussion. In order to respect everybody's time and to wrap up the session, we've already said many of these things, but main thing is, networking as in support each other. And as we all said, that this is not a disease, or this pandemic is not going to choose people based on their behavior. It's anybody and everybody can get it. So what is in our control? our attitudes, our behavior is in our control. So if we can examine our own thinking, and of course, it is not something that we are doing consciously. Most of it, what is being reinforced through society, through our upbringing. So we have to be extra conscious in educating ourselves, making sure we use our words carefully, and being compassionate and trying to put yourselves in other person's shoes and what they are going through. I think that would be the first step. And as Deepa said, focusing on the positive and supporting each other. So I hope we all got at least a few things to take away and discuss and think about. Sheetal?
It's just my kids are like right by me and you'll hear some humming, but just ignore it. Yeah, tell me, Sayali.
Yeah, so I was just thinking, should we wrap up? Unless anybody has any last minute thoughts to share, I think we can wrap up.
So the one thing that I will say, that if I see that there's a lot of questions are coming in and people are very interested in this, let's schedule another session. Sayali?
Okay.
Yeah. What do you think, Lakshmi?
So I think first of all, I want to thank Sayali for this bringing together this panel and this very important topic for all of us. Sayali, that was wonderful. I do believe we had a very healthy, very extensive discussion on the topic. What I would like is this is available on our Maanini group, and many people who are not able to watch it live today will probably get the chance over the next week or so to watch the recording. And we encourage all of you who are watching the recording to please give your comments and questions in the comment section. So based on the response, Sheetal, we can take those questions and determine, like, should we have another session as a follow-up to this one, or is there enough material and in request for a another session on a slightly different but related topic?
Correct. Yeah,
So
yeah.
we can probably make that call maybe in about a week or so, after people have had a chance to look at it and we've had a chance to look at the questions. Of course, Sayali and all of the panelists that are here can answer those questions in the comments. You all are members of the Maanini group, or if not, we would love to have you join the group and answer those questions, and then we can determine, like, does this, and give us feedback. Did you like this session? Do you want to hear more? Give us your feedback, so that this is for all of us, the Maanini group. Anything we share here is for all of us, for each and every one of us. It's a support group. So if you'd like to hear more or on a different topic, related topic, please share that as well in the comments, and we'd be happy to offer something.
Yeah. And if you want to be a part of this panel, if you want to be active in talking and sharing, also let us know. So next time we can have a different group of people, so everybody gets a chance to share.
And I also want to add one thing, and I have this experience before, that a lot of people write, offline on Messenger that, hey, I want to know more about this, but I'm afraid to talk about it publicly. So if there is anybody who's listening to it and you want us to address something that you are shy or unsure or scared or feel threatened about talking about it publicly, please reach out to us, and we can definitely address it. If you want to keep your identity
confidential, we'll keep it.
We'll do that. So just, you can trust us. It's a great panel, great women, and we understand all kinds of things happen, and we want to make sure you're safe and you're healthy, mentally, physically, both. And thank you, Sayali, and everybody who's here today on the panel and who's watching, who has asked us a lot of questions. We tried to include as many as possible, but I'll encourage Sayali especially, and the panel, Lakshmi also, who can go in and just address any questions we have individually. Absolutely. If we need to. All right.
Thank you all.
Thank you all. Thank you,
Thank
Sonali,
you.
especially our guest speaker. And thank you, Bena ji. Thank you, Aditi, Shreyasi, Jyoti, everybody. And stay healthy. Talk to you soon. Bye.
Thank you. It was good to put the names to the faces.